everybody. Welcome to Pealed Back's LiveCast Conversations With. I'm your host, Gene Bernier, the Enjoyment Coach. And today, we've got a special show. We've got two guests on. We have Annie MacLeod and Mel Clifford. Annie has a real passion for ensuring that her clients are successful both personally and professionally. She began her project management career in the tech sector and started her own consulting firm, Business Improvement Consulting Services, over 20 years ago. BICS has specialized in making project teams and projects successful by streamlining PM practices and having a highly efficient project team. She's passionate about collaboration and has become an evangelist for Miro, the online collaboration product at the forefront of making meetings, projects, and learnings truly effective in the remote world. With this passion, she has volunteered as a Miro virtual user group leader for North America and is responsible to plan, engage, coordinate, and facilitate expert user presentations, and more importantly, to make them as interactive and engaging as possible. She also is a member of the Miro Expert Facilitator panel. Mel's been on the show before, and Mel is a highly experienced professional director of organizational change and project management. Mel spent his career working in the area of people development, along with delivering large-scale projects within the retail, manufacturing, logistics, finance, IT, and healthcare sectors. Mel's worked across Europe, North America, and China. Mel's personal passion is sharing the key philosophy that creating lasting change in any area of your life is possible without first completely accepting personal responsibility and recognizing that change is in our hands. Annie and Mel are the co-creators of the Project Management Gameboard, a system for non-project managers to learn and manage their projects that has culture, high-performing teams at its core. Mel and Annie, thank you so much for being on the show, guys.
Hi, Gene. Thank you for having us.
All right. So tell us a little bit. Obviously, project management and creating high-performing teams is part of both of your DNAs. Tell us a little bit about your journeys as you've gone into project management. Annie, can we start with you?
Yeah, well, I like to tell people I'm a bit of a slow learner. I went to university and took accounting for 7 years. And before I discovered I'm not very good at it and I don't like it. But being in accounting back in the 80s, that was where you stuck personal computers and a lot of the computing departments because they didn't know what to do with them back in the 80s. So I ended up managing an IT department and setting it up with a data center. And I literally found my peeps and found my passion with project management back in the 80s.
Nice. And now that's continued to bring you forward, like into the world that you are now, creating your own framework around it, being, leading some of these big events and everything else. Obviously, that's all requires a really strong project manager that can see the whole start to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that's never dull. Every project is different. Every project team is different. And that's what's kept me engaged through all these years is being able to work with the people that I've been able to work with all this time.
So obviously, if you've gone out and built your own framework, there must be some really common things that jump out to you that you're like, oh, man, I wish we had a solution for some of this.
Yep, that's true. And that's really how Mel and I kind of met is I moved to Kelowna almost 5 years ago and he was showing up at events and he was a regular fixture at the coffee shop downtown. And we kept running into each other and having conversations over and over about project management. And we just put our heads together and just said, why do projects keep failing? I mean, it just seems to go on and on and on. And yet both of us in our careers seem to have a lot of real strong project successes. So that was really the impetus for us to try and get together. And we kind of locked ourselves in Accelerate Okanagan for about 3 straight months to create the Project Gameboard. Right, Mel?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was great. It was funny how it came about. We kept on bumping into each other and then we started talking about things. And then as Annie was new to Kelowna, I was giving her some of the lowdown about living in Kelowna, working in Kelowna. And then after a while, then she came back and said, "Oh, you were right." And then we started saying, because we had a large background in many different sectors in project management, we started talking about, why projects fail. And we wanted to really change that. And it started off really, it was about sort of project management for non-project managers, helping them. And as I said, by putting our two heads together and thinking differently, we came up with the Project Management Gameboard, with the focus to, make project management fun, but also to give it a logical framework that individuals could follow, no matter where they were in the project, be it in the beginning cycle or implementation or planning, etc. You could just jump to any section of the board on it. So we worked really well together. And then we sort of brought in some people to have a look at it, some project managers, and we asked them what they thought and what, and we presented it a few times at the project management meetups, and everyone was excited about it. And then we went and piloted it with 2 organizations in the beginning. And then we, as we piloted it, we modified and made it better, and they were quite excited about it. And then it's like everything, it's a living thing. So that the basics and the foundation is all there, and it's different for different organizations, but that's how it all came together. And, as you said earlier on about the passion, we have a passion to help people and support them in managing the projects much better, so they deliver what the original goals and achievements and objectives are. So
that's incredible, and it's great to kind of see how those things evolve over time, right? Now, there's kind of 2 things around project management that you both have kind of hinted on, is that projects have some common failure points, and they could also be fun. So as a group going, hey, Mel, you just mentioned that any project can take this, the project management game board, and apply it no matter where they are in their stream of the project. So at what points people should be thinking, man, we're actually in trouble because we're kind of lost in the weeds? What are some of the commonality problems that, I know that's a big question, but and we can generalize it here on the show, but what are the kind of those general things people could be aware of, going, oh, actually I see this red flag in my project. I didn't even know it's a red flag. I could probably make use with something that could get us out of this problem.
Annie, do you want to start?
No, we could go on for another hour or 2 or 3 about that. But I guess one of the big ones that I see frequently is, or the top 2 that I see is the project that goes on forever, that it just never seems to have an end. And then I think the other key symptom, I think that Mel can really speak to a lot, is the team. When you start seeing the team break down and the team getting frustrated or stressed out, or that to me is really your early warning system of where your project is at, right, Mel?
Yeah, I was saying, projects fail because of people. And when you see frustration coming in, and as Annie said, the project's going on forever, and you sort of hear, whatever happened about that project people were working on? Oh, they're still working on it, And one of the key elements actually is the organizations don't define in their organization what their definition of a project is. So almost everything becomes a project, right? And we had a client once that had 63 different projects. And when we got them to define, well, tell us what your definition of a project is, and we helped them create that definition, it came down to, I think, 17 projects.
Without naming names, or be what is the difference then between, going from 63, initiatives down to we actually have 17 projects? What ended up happening with those, with the leftovers? Did they end up getting rolled out, put down? Did they turn into something else? Did they all collapse? Like, when you see that kind of stuff and you talk about what does that definition of a project mean, what else well, first off, I'll start with, what's your definition of a project? And then what are some of the things that you see that are masquerading as a project that are causing kind of this bloat?
So what happened to the rest of them? They were either just processes and operational day-to-day activities, right? That they've classified as projects, or there were subsection of larger projects, right? So that's where they went. But the second question was, okay, of these 17, if you could only deliver this year on 6 of them, what are the top 6?
Right.
And it's amazing how then, and people said, yeah, well, actually, as Annie has a phrase, she says, you're trying to boil the ocean, you know? And it's breaking them down. So, in fact, on the game board, one of the first steps is, what is your definition of a project? Now, you asked me a definition. There's a standard, you know, it's a product or service, a start or beginning, blah, 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 textbook stuff. But the definition we talk, well, it could be from our organization, it could be anything that's over $20,000 or $50,000, anything that involves more than 3 different sections and departments, anything. So we get them to help them to create their definition. So we don't have a standard out of the box definition.
Right.
Annie?
No, that's absolutely true. And it's like Gina had alluded to earlier is, some of those things do drop by the wayside because they find that, there's some tasks or people working off in isolation, but really it wasn't clear what was their ultimate goal. What kind of, how is that supporting that organization strategically or something like that, that some of them just become make work projects that seem to go on forever and they get that suck a lot of resources out of the organization, but they're really going nowhere anytime soon.
Right. So when I hear that, like the word that jumps up that is like striking for all those problems is clarity around what it means, right? Like, so there's a lack of clarity. Either somebody's not asking for it, or there's an organizational psychological safety challenge around, I know a big part of this is around team performance, which means being able to ask questions and handle getting some of those answers back. So without clarity, the whole project falls apart from the start. If you're not clear on what success means, not clear on what what's a process versus what's a project versus like what's a day-to-day, and not clear on what's actually important for the company, all of it is ends up just being make work stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And most organizations today, they don't have the resources to dedicate to projects. So many projects are being managed part-time by part-time project managers. Plus you've got resources that have got operational responsibilities as well as project responsibilities. And it is very complex out there to get projects executed.
Oh, yes. When it starts being on the side of the desk, it ends up, you're getting just that little minuscule amount of work that's happening anyways. I just read a report recently where it's like the work about work, basically distraction work, is up to like 60% in some organizations, which leaves only 40% for like your strategic, like impactful work, right? So you slice out meetings, you slice out conversations around that don't have clarity or ad hoc processes or all that other stuff, and then you got 40%. So out of that 40%, then you have to start slicing it into like doing something off the side of your desk. That quickly turns into like doing 2-3 hours a week, which makes any project drag on for a very, very long time.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
And you often find the same resources are spread thinly across several different projects. So, and it's the same people. And this, the big issue for a lot of organizations, as Andy alluded to, is the lack of resources and to actually deliver these projects as the same people, etc., that they're trying to get to do them. But, there's major frustrations. And when you talk about clarity, the big one that the board deals with is, and maybe we'll just show you the board and walk you through some of the steps that might help, is around roles and responsibilities. The amount of time people are totally unclear of what their role and responsibilities are within a project. And we have a great tip to help people establish that very clearly. So everyone on the team is doing it. And the board is full of tips, along the way when we're working with companies.
Well, I think maybe showing it answers my next question about like how does the project management game board support people that are in these projects and these non-project managers to actually execute at a very high efficiently level. So yeah. Annie, I think you're running the share. Let's try this. Yep. This is a first on the live cast that we're doing a share screen. So there we go. All right, it's up.
Cool.
There's the board overall. So as Mel had alluded to, we've got, there's different phases to it. We have 4 legs to it. And it all starts out with, does this qualify as a project? So that's how we talk about how you get on the board type of thing. Then we have 4 legs, which is kind of listen. How do you initiate those projects? How do you understand in the planning phase? How do you collaborate and deliver that project? And then ultimately how you reflect on things. So because we like to enforce a continuous improvement. So, in the listen, it's all about, we've got different steps. Make sure that it's almost like intended to be a checklist so that you understand that you've touched all those bases when you're doing your listen phase through to the planning. And again, we really emphasize the people. So team kickoffs and stuff are really important. So we do that planning piece, and we have checkpoints or checklists at the end of each leg, because sometimes you may have a project that it might be the right project, but the wrong time. And then we go in to deliver the project. And again, we may have another team kickoff, because it's not always the same team that delivers the project that plans it. And then we reflect to make sure we understand lessons learned and how do we do things better next time. And then at the center of it, we've got a culture of freedom and safety. So that's what we're trying to build for the entire project team, that they can be as successful as possible.
So maybe Annie, I'm just looking at it. Oh, you've stopped sharing. I was going to say, like, on the legs, it was hard to see what they were, but what a lot of the first leg deals with loads of things that frustrate, senior teams, project managers, senior executives, etc., all around projects. And as Annie's pointed out, first of all, does this qualify for a project? And therefore they have to have their own definition. And once it qualifies for a project, then we say, well, then if it qualifies for a project, you must allocate the right resources to it. So you must have a project sponsor, you must have a project manager. And then it identifies, like goes through, one of the other frustrations is all around stakeholders. So it deals with that very clearly in identifying who are the stakeholders, what's their role and responsibilities. And we have a template to help them identify the roles and responsibilities and what the expectations and concerns are, and how do you meet those of a stakeholder. And then, as Annie said, at the end of it, there's a checklist that you check that you've covered all the steps that you need to do before you go into planning. Because a lot of organizations go from planning, from initiation or saying we're doing this project, into implementation, and they drop out this planning phase.
Well, that can just be cut from the budget, right? Like, no one needs to totally plan, right? He said that very cheekily with some project management PSD that comes along with that statement.
That's being agile too.
Well, actually that brings up a great question, right? Because there are a lot of already existing project management frameworks, and agile is a big buzzword that's used and probably misused quite regularly in this world. So talk about how this framework kind of sits and guides regardless of how you're applying and doing the work. Maybe that's even the wrong question, but I'll throw it out there.
No, I don't. I think it is. It's an excellent question, Jean. We get that a lot because just like Mel said, we get a lot of folks. And I think part of it is the software industry too, because we've got Basecamp and Monday and Jira, and there's a million software platforms out there. So they very much focus on implementation kind of thing. And there are pros and cons to, how agile are those? So what we focused on the Project Management Gameboard is getting those front end pieces correct. So the Gameboard is not intended to get rid of agile or any of those things. It's very much meant to complement those kinds of things. And especially that whole listen leg, the front end and the stakeholder management, there's none of those. The agile disciplines I haven't found speak very strongly to those.
Right.
And there's no consideration for that in any of the software platforms. So we sit those things on top of it so that when you actually go to execute, you've got some of that pre-work that actually makes it incredibly elegant to execute.
And that's actually a really great point for anybody that's listening that's in project management land. It's just because you've got a Monday or a Jira or whatever the flavor of the week is, you're already 3 steps into a project. And if you're starting there, you've skipped 2 really, really important ones to bring everybody along on that journey, right? So having this framework allows you to go, cool, did we get to those steps? Are we actually asked all the right questions before we've started going, Mel, I want you to write this thing. I want you to go do this code and deliver this design and everything else. Is there a reason for it? And did we validate that reason? And does everybody have sign off that should actually have sign off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And does everyone have clarity on actually what the project is? Because often within organizations, they abdicate their, involvement because it's somebody else's project. It's another department section. Okay, we're involved in it somewhere along the line, but it's theirs. Rather than, as we call it, there's one team. There's the project team, and it's made up of all the different people that need to be on that team, and it's only one team. And what we encourage strongly is when, like Annie pointed out, the kickoff meetings, and that's where we bring that about, how we're going to work together, how we're going to get over issues when issues happen. And they are going to happen, and what does success look like, and what does success not look like, or failure look like, and then how can we eliminate that? And it's very much focusing on the rules of engagement of the team, and understanding that if people are from different departments, forget about your department. You're there as whatever role, subject expert or whatever you're in, but you're part of this team,
right?
And you only have one project, and the king of the castle, is the project sponsor and the project manager. And whether you're a few pay grades above there and you're part of the team, no, you're a team member. You can't pull rank. And this is a big frustration for managers, is managing up, the senior executives, the higher paid, and then coming in and, changing things or whatever. And we make that very, very clear with the leadership team, etc. Who's the boss on this project? And if there's issues there's a process to manage senior management's expectation on this. And some organizations where the boss, the owner is the boss, it can be very frustrating for a project team to manage that because it's their way, etc. And then that moment,
that never happens, Mel. And if it does, reach out. We can help you.
Yeah, but we've done it with them. They've seen that they're actually getting better projects delivered. They're not as frustrated as what's happening on all of this because they've decided these are the key ones. Annie's great at matching up, what is the journey and what is the overall strategy and how does this fit in and all that type of thing. Annie?
Yeah, no, I think those are really good points because it keeps drawing back to that people piece. And in some of the use cases we've been doing recently with the game board, what I found has been really interesting is it's really cool to be able to set up a language where you can bridge your project with your customer. So those, you may have an internal project or if it's a development project or something like that, people are building code, they're thoroughly buried in their Jira and Monday and all those kind of things. But how do you incorporate your customer into those conversations, right? They're a key stakeholder too. And you don't want to bury them in the details of what you're doing with all your task cards, but to get, manage expectations, to make them part of that one team, all those things. We found the game board's a great kind of neutral language, easy to understand, very visual. So you can broaden that team to make sure your customer is aligned with where you're doing it and why you're doing it.
Yeah,
I think that's a really important point.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, bring the clients along, or whatever your version of clients are. It is, creating a spot for them, and then having this as a common language that you can all speak. Like that's a big component of it, right? Is being able to have this as that common language for everybody that's sitting in there. Go ahead, Mel. Sorry.
Well, no, I was just picking up what Annie reminded me when she said, it's easy to understand. It's easy to understand and easy to implement. And it's not rocket science, and often some of this is common knowledge, but, it's not always, as I say, common practice. And, even on as I said, we've, loads of tips and little gems like in the listen phase, but also as part of this, Annie created a great tip when you're dealing with the budget, the timeline, and the scope of the work, right? And we have a great little mechanism to get that sorted out between all the different stakeholders, because they all have different expectations based on it. And we include, of course, quality in there. And it's a narrative process, always changing.
Right. So that kind of leads into my next question. Now you can say, hey, we can't actually talk about this, or we can, but like, do you have some like examples of projects that you guys have deployed this on that have been like taken, you talked about the 63 projects at the start and we kind of like got away from it, but like, can we get into a little bit more of like a hands-on like mini case study about how this has helped in your guys' practice that you're doing?
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll just give you some examples. We worked with a company in the oil and gas sector, and we brought them through the board. And one of the things that we created, we said we had checklists. One of the things that we're bidding on jobs, and the MD says, well, you're never going to get any of the jobs that you don't bid on. So they were bidding on everything. Right. So myself and Annie worked with them and said, well, hold on a wee second. What is your criteria for bidding, right? And they created a bid or no bid checklist, right? For the project, are we going to bid on these projects or are we not? And we went through what the criteria is and all of that type of thing. We looked at that, and they apply that now to their bidding process. And everyone they bid for, they've got, right? Because they were very, very clear on why they were bidding for this project, and that really worked out well for them. And, I had lunch some time back with the MD, and he said, we had the best year ever, because what we weren't doing was wasting time putting bids in and things we really didn't want, but we thought we should have bid on them. And that's just one. And I think, Annie, maybe you might want to talk to the one about where we went in and closed the project and started it again.
Yeah. There was one, it was, I think a lot of people could relate to, a website build. I mean, they already had an existing website, but, they were going to do major modifications, especially, it's become even more apparent now with COVID, what's going on. Everything's going so much more digital and stuff. Those are huge projects at huge demand. But they had gone through a process where they'd selected vendors and all those kinds of things. But this project just kept going on and on and on. It had been running for over a year with no end in sight. And they just kept pushing back the launch date, all those things. And over the years, I've run into all kinds of customers like that. And what we were able to do is use the game board, kind of go back to, why are we doing this? What's going on? And able to get to the root cause of, what was going on with this project. And it turns out that they, through no fault of their own and some of the people involved, but they had the wrong vendor at the table. They didn't have the capabilities that they had hoped they would. And so they were trying to make a bad relationship work.
Right.
that didn't have the right skills and stuff. So what we were able to do is just say, okay, fine, let's close that off, put a nice little stop point into it. Let's go back to basics. Let's find out why exactly are we doing this again. And we're able to reinitiate the project with the right understanding up front. Because we didn't have all the right stakeholders. There had been reorgs and new, vice presidents and, senior resources had been acquired through this project journey. And those people had never been engaged really in it too. So the behind the scenes, the organization had changed, but the project didn't have acknowledgement of that.
Right. So it was kind of detached from the reality of the organization. It's just like everyone looked at it and went, well, it's just been here for a while and somebody must think it's important. That's why it's still going, right? Waiting for somebody else to pull the trigger on it, right? And that's also a great point that I see from that is that the reality of why that project at one point was like really important may shift at any point while that project's ongoing. And that is okay for it to be like, we're putting a pin in this one because it no longer serves our needs. And we actually have something that we can deploy the resources that are going to get a much better return for all that investment.
Yeah, that's very true. Because one of the truisms I advocate for all my PMs is one of three things is going to change every 90 days. You're going to run out of money. In other words, that budget's going to get allocated to something else. You're going to lose a key resource, or organizational direction is going to change. There's going to be a new set of priorities. And you need to plan for that up front. Like Mel talks extensively kind of about pre-mortems and some of those things. So that's a lot of stuff we like to build into the projects is anticipate that stuff, because it's not if it happens, it's when it happens.
And having the bravery to like talk about it and be prepared for it ahead of time instead of like kind of putting your head in the sand, or maybe not even if you're a junior or new to running a project, be like, no, this should go smoothly, right? Snicker. But like being able to have that set of questions, I imagine that must be part of the checklists and the conversations that are in that listen phase then.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because we have in the planning leg, we have risk assimilation, and a lot of people do the standard risk management. What is the risk? What is the impact on the risk? What is the possibility of this happening and all of that type? And they do lovely charts and put them in. They've done a risk management. But what we've a great way of actually getting them to simulate the risk. And therefore, as Annie was saying, when it happens, we know what we're doing. It's like if you have a client or a customer ringing you and say, "Oh, I believe there's a problem and such." Oh, and it's sort of, "Oh, let me get back to you. I'll come back to you, John." You say, "Yes," say their name is John. "Yes, John, we're aware of that, and this is what we're doing about it, and this is where we are on it, and we expect that this is going to be sorted by this time." So they already have the action plan and the roles and the responsibilities and all those allocated, and things change all the time. So it's managing all of that. So within the game board, and one of the unique thing about it is that you do not have to start at start and like a monopoly. It depends where your project is, and this is where it comes to rescuing projects that this is the right phase to go in.
Right.
And as Annie mentioned, it's no, we need to close this. So we go into the reflect stage and go through all of those steps that are there. And then we start another phase. So we say we close this phase and then we start and we go back to the beginning and ask those critical questions around, the stakeholders and what's the business case or why are we doing that and where does it fit in and what are the stakeholders' expectations and following that before we then plan on how we're going to implement it.
Right. So this sounds like a fairly unique system, especially for people that have jumped into the world of just the execution side of the tools we've spoken to before. What is it that truly makes this tool so unique compared to the other ones that you've seen out there?
Well,
I think I've got my own opinion.
I want to hear both.
There you go.
Well, one of the things that we did is a few years ago that you alluded to in the introduction is explored Miro. And I think that's really one of the waves of the future is collaboration, is especially the people that are much, much younger than I am. I won't speak on your behalf. But, you know, they grew up in school doing presentations and collaborative teamwork. And I think with the complexity of our organizations and the knowledge and stuff out there, that collaboration is going to be the way to make it effective. And because we've put the game board into Miro as the backbone, and every opportunity that we can throughout the different pieces of the board, we're looking for ways to collaborate, make decisions, gather information, check in on how the status of the project is. And I think that's a key differentiator for us going forward. Right. How about you, Mel?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, people at the very beginning were asking myself and Annie, so are you going to put this into software such and like? And we both had a view, oh, hold on a wee second. You could dig a big hole and put money in the way you're going. And with a client a few years ago, we found, it used to be called real-time board. We found that and it became a real fit. And fair play to Annie. She took that by the scruff of the neck or by the ears and dragged me in, because I was, oh no, we're going to, and then it was brilliant. And now it is one of the unique features that it really fits in well with the Miro board, and it encourages collaboration. And not only that is we built different tools now, in relation to how do you work out the timelines, customer journeys, trying to think of the other one.
Sweet potatoes.
The sweet potatoes. Yeah, we got exercises to help them. And I actually used, when I was teaching on the project management certificate program, and it went online, I actually used the Miro board to get the students involved to do their presentations, and got it all set up so you can set up your templates and things like that. But yeah, and the other thing is, we address the frustrations that companies and teams have in managing projects, and we as Annie said, at the center of the foundation of it, all of this is about creating a culture of the teamwork and safety, and that people feel comfortable in communicating. And it's not about, we say it's not about putting the issue between us. It's about putting it out there and everybody working on it, and it's making it clear to how we work together and how we want to work together, and that's at the foundation. And that's a whole module in itself that sort of underpins, or is about the foundation of the board. And the other uniqueness is we address project sponsors' roles and responsibilities, because there's a lack of training for project sponsors, so you're going to do a finance project. You're going to change maybe whether it's software or systems, or what are you going to do? So they make the finance director, right, the project sponsor, so we say, oh, yeah, that's great. But our personal belief is they're the client, they're the customer, right? So you make somebody else the sponsor, and there's loads of benefits for organization in doing that. So there's a whole module about teaching what is the role of a project sponsor, and all that type of thing. And each of those steps, you could take one of the steps and say, well, okay, so talk to me about stakeholder engagement, right? And who are they? And then we have tools and templates to support organizations in how you would do that, and in implementation as well, as you're managing the project through implementation. And we have what we call the triangle, the priority triangle, which really supports the identification around the quality, the scope, the time, and the cost, and understanding all of that, and bringing the stakeholders on board to understand that they all have different expectations and concerns, but you're not going to get them all. So
what? You put them on there, Mel. I want all three to be at the highest level possible. That's
no, it doesn't work like that in real life. Everyone thinks it does, but it doesn't.
Yeah. So a couple questions, because I realized we're at 40 minutes. Like I said at the top of the show, is that we're going to blow through this really super quick. But you kind of teased at like this idea of a project sponsor. Would you give us like your 2-minute definition of what that is?
Yeah, we characterize it in a lot of our presentation that it's Mr. Moneybags. If you think of it, that they're the ones that are providing the funding for the project, and then a big part of the value add to the team is that's where the team and the project manager go to remove organizational roadblocks.
Right.
So there's the ones that get the rocks out of the way and make sure, and also they're the eyes and ears of the strategic part of the organization. So they're really the early warning system again for the PM and the team of, hey, if organizational priorities changed, that sponsor's the one that's coming back into the team and helping them tune up and stay aligned. Right. Hey, Mel, is that part of it?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's critical that the project manager and the sponsor have a very good working relationship, and supports the project sponsor in the management of the leadership team or etc. And and stands up, to maybe the owner or whatever. He might be the money bags or whatever it is, but and actually takes their role seriously by understanding what are my responsibilities and accountabilities as a project sponsor. And it is about removing roadblocks. It is about making timely decisions. It is about breaking, negotiating between stakeholders, all right? And it's just because someone shouts the loudest doesn't mean it's right for the project.
Right.
Right? And it's about and when you start to manage all of that, and you start, we've seen some incredible teams that work together from different sections of the company that had baggage before, but when they were on this team, they realized with the kickoff, you are one team. We've agreed this is how we're going to work, and they really enjoyed and had fun working on the project because they were able to communicate. And then another thing is we built in surveys to address how is everybody working, so it's a list of questions, and we ask the question, and then we ask, how are you showing up, sort of thing, with a list of questions, and how are others showing up? And it's amazing. Everyone thinks they're showing up great and could improve. And we sort of go, well, you are the others.
If you can't find the problem source in the room, it's probably you.
Exactly. And, addressing, as I say, addressing what, there's a few things I always say. Always be curious. Don't lose the curiosity you have. Always address the elephant in the room, and always state the bleeding obvious. So if you see something going wrong, or you're looking at statistics and it looks, ask the question. Now, there's ways of asking that, not just, hey, such and such. It's about, help me understand why this figure is this, or this shape is this on the graph, or why it's going this way, or why, and it's addressing, the atmosphere and the mood of the room. So it deals with all of that. It's not about, also it's, it's about, we show you the how, often we know why and we know what, but often how do we do this? And it's by working with teams. And a philosophy of, we go in and it's, Annie, you'll remind me because I'll get it wrong, the 3-step approach that we always use, which is
lead, follow, and get out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah, because we want to move on. We don't want to be sitting in that, in a project for years with a company. We want to help them become self-sufficient so we can move on to help others.
You want to kick the little birdie out of the nest and watch them fly and be like, yes, we're so proud of you.
Absolutely. There's a great quote. Now I can't even think of it when I say the great quote. It's eagles. It's about eagles needing a push. And I remember I used it about 30 years ago when I was in a large organization, and I wasn't the director. I was just a senior executive, and I used it in a presentation. And if I find it, I'll send it to you, right? put the link. Even eagles need a push. That was it.
Yeah. All right.
And
There's the quote. We'll use that one.
Yeah, there's a great line about it, and the gist of the story is basically like even eagle. They're sitting at the top of the nest, and the mother eagle is sort of, she wants them to fly, and she wants them to such and such, and she wants them to take that leap and jump, and they don't, and they're all nervous and it's about knowing that this is the first time, and it's that little push that you give people, and then they soar. So and the delight of that. So with the project management, it is helping on giving that push and then watch them. It's beautiful. Like when we lead, follow, and step away, watching them soar, and and they're just delivering projects.
It's powerful.
Yeah,
it is.
I know that we're at 46 minutes, so there's two other things. One is the word collaboration has been brought up a lot over this. I'd love to hear that definition from you guys, and then as well, what makes a great fit for people to connect with you guys? So, and who are you looking for ideally at this stage of the development of the game board? So start with collaboration. What does that mean for each of you?
Well, collaboration to me is I think, it's, as Mel always says, it's not about the loudest voice in the room. It's about making and creating space for everyone to be heard, and for everybody to contribute.
Yeah, I suppose we do an exercise with people on collaboration, and we ask them, what is the difference between cooperation and collaboration? And we get them to identify several points. So, for example, it's not about who does what or what needs to be done. Egos are in cooperation. You hear things, well, we gave, they're not great. Well, we gave them what they wanted. Collaboration is giving them more than what they want, what they need to deliver, not what they asked for. And we asked the question, would you rather cooperate or collaborate? And the answer always is we rather collaborate, because in the human emotional feeling, they believe everybody has an interest in the success of the project. And when the project is successful or failure, everyone takes shared ownership of that.
Love it. All right. That's great, guys. And I was kind of hoping that you talk about the cooperation versus collaboration. So perfect. So how do people get in touch with you guys? And what is usually that next steps for somebody going, I think my project might be in danger, or I don't want it to go down this route?
Well, one of the easiest ways is to go to pmgameboard.com and contact us. There's a form there to submit, or a phone number, and we can talk them through of what that could look like.
Yeah,
awesome,
absolutely. So, and Annie at projectmanagementgameboard.com, and Mel at the same. So the thing about anyone's in trouble with the project, etc., are totally frustrated and needs support. It doesn't matter what sector they're in. We've worked in loads of different sectors. And as you said, the first thing, contact us, fill in the form, and then have a conversation, have a consultation, and just give us an understanding of where you're at and what you're trying to do. We did do a workshop before COVID, which was a 2-day workshop for business leaders, etc., around the whole area, explaining about the board, and we integrated the people side and showed the board and walked them through, and the people that attended that got great value out of it. And one of the comments was, wow, I got more than I even thought I was going to get from this. And they got an approach which is different, that works.
Love it. So if you're out there and you've ever gotten frustrated with a project in your organization, go hit up the PM Game Board. These guys are going to help you and make that stress disappear and make conflict healthy again. That at the end of the day, it's going to help resolve a lot of things, and your people are going to enjoy working on these projects. So definitely hit them up. Mel and Annie, thank you both for being on the show today. This was a great pleasure, great conversation around project management and efficiencies. I love it. And just thank you both for being on here.
Thank you for having us. You were going to ask a question.
I am going to ask a question before we head out.
I think we're going to go because
we got to ask everybody this question.
Yeah.
So we're going to ask both of you guys. The question I've asked now on 52 episodes of these things is, I've got a time machine. We're going to jump in it. We're going to go back in time 10 years. You each get to hop out and give yourselves one piece of advice. So we're going to get 2 pieces today. So Annie or Mel, who feels ready?
Well, I think I'd say, as I say, I'd listen to my heart more, and I would say no more to things. Yeah. You know, I take on a lot of stuff because, you know, I want to help, I want to support, etc. But as I say, you know, you can lend somebody $20 and they can always give you the $20 back. But if somebody asks you for 20 minutes, you're never going to get that back. So I'd listen to my heart more, and I would say no more.
Protect your yeses. I love that.
Yeah, I think mine would be quite similar. I think Mel would be very much about, you know, when it doesn't feel right, it's not right. I mean, it's very much about, you know, if you feel like you're pushing rope all day, every day, listen to that and explore it more. And like you said earlier, you know, look at it with curiosity. There's other ways to approach things and try something new.
Yeah,
perfect. I love it. Those are great answers, guys. And by the way, there's no wrong answer to that question. So again, thank you both for being on the show. Like I said, if anybody needs project management help, Mel and Annie are the first stops to get it done. And thank you for watching episode 52. We've had a couple watchers make it all the way through. You guys are rock stars as well. We really appreciate you. Come back next week for episode 53. As always, I'm Gene Bernier, the enjoyment coach from Pealed Back, where we want you to be excited every day that you put your feet on the ground. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Gene.
Thanks a lot.